What's up, everybody? Welcome to the White Sox Recap Podcast. I'm Ryan McGuffey. He's Brian Anderson, and we are live. We are doing our first live White Sox Recap Podcast. For those of you catching up, that's cool too, because this podcast will be found wherever you get your podcast audio or here on the Recap Network on YouTube. And of course, it's always brought by the Illinois Tollway campaign, their If Only campaign. The Illinois Tollway is dedicated to providing a safe and efficient system of 294 miles of roadways while ensuring the highest possible level of service to customers. The Sox are going for the sweep of the Cincinnati Reds. We got the game on. We're going to react live. We're going to take your questions, and we're going to talk about why the Chicago White Sox, dare we say, are red hot. It's the White Sox Recap Podcast, a live edition. Ryan McGuffey, Brian Anderson. It starts right now. All right, BA. What's up, my man?
What's up,
in
man?
The flesh, here in the studio, the White Sox. It's good to, you know what it's actually good to talk about? The idea that they're going for a sweep. They're going for the sweep. I know. They are going for the sweep of the Cincinnati Reds today. And I'll say this, regardless of whatever happens in today's game, they've already proven they went into a first road series win of the year already. Tough environment in a place where a team has expectations. They've hired Terry Francona, and they're thinking they're part of the NL Central conversation. They've played well of late. After coming back from Kansas City, they got swept in 4 games to the Red Hot Royals. They put that behind them. They win 2 of 3 against the Miami Marlins at home over the weekend. They go on the road, and they've won 2 straight against Cincinnati. What have you liked?
Well, winning a series on the road, especially against Cincinnati, they're a gritty team, is playing in that ballpark too and playing for Terry Francona. But, man, those are the small little chips you put on the table as a manager. Will Venables going, guys, a series win, you build off something like that, and it continues to build that momentum. Then you go home and play in the crosstown. You go play. I mean, it's not at home, but it's technically in the same city, so we'll take it. But this is those things that help build franchise and build winners. You got to take the small wins, and you win a series on the road against Cincinnati. That's something to build on.
I'm glad you brought up crosstown. We're going to get into that. Certainly, some of your favorite memories from crosstown. I've covered a million of them, going way back to when you played. It's always a big series. I think it's lost a little bit of the punch, I guess pun intended in this case, of the old days before. I thought it legit, and Paulie told us this when he was on the podcast with us, prior to 2005, now that they've both won a World Series, like for us, maybe for the younger generation, it's still awesome, and it's still great. The atmosphere is still great. The drama and the passion of the fan bases are still great. But prior to when you guys won in 2005, and certainly the 16 Cubs, it really was the World Series. And remember Canerco saying right here on our podcast that the idea of saying World Series champions in Chicago, it was like, you're an idiot if you actually publicly said that, because everyone knew what you were staring at. Over 100, almost 200 years of combined, dreadfulness in baseball. And now, I'll get your thought here, and then we'll talk more about kind of what we've seen recently from the White Sox. But Crosstown's still fun, but it's not the same as it once was, late 90s, early 2000s.
Well, they always say the fans, it doesn't matter if both of us suck. Like, if both teams suck, it's still a great game. It's still a lot of fun for the fans. And it's something to get juiced up about. It's impossible not to go to Wrigley. You're sitting there, and it starts with BP, right? You're sitting there, you can hear the frat boys and their girlfriends, talking shit.
What were they saying to you?
Oh my God. Anderson, you suck. You call you dropping a few
sure.
other, unsavory things.
Yeah.
We'll keep it PG for the fans, but throwing shit at you.
Yeah.
And finally, I used to get so annoyed. I would be like, okay, watch this. I'd tell Scotty Pods or Jermaine, I go, watch this. I write my number on a ball, flip it up to the guy's girlfriend, and be like, you keep talking shit, I promise you we'll meet your girlfriend over at High Tops or HVAC. I promise you that.
Meanwhile, she's looking at it going, let me just put this in my phone real quick, because she knows.
Nice, what do you comb your hair with a brick? Nice hair and nice Crocs shades or whatever the hell you're wearing.
He's Brian Anderson. I'm Ryan McGuffey. We're doing the White Sox Recap Podcast live. The White Sox and Reds set to go at it for Game 3 of their 3-game series. And look, I say, dare we say the White Sox are hot? Yes. I think it's okay to say that this particular team, they're 4-1 their last 5 games. They're plus 10 in the run differential. Their team ERA during just this week is under 2. And we'll single out pitching here for a second. the pitching has been as good. And I'm saying this, and I don't care. Publicly, I will say this. It's been as good as any team in the game. It's been as good as any team in the game. They are, in the month of May, I think I looked, they are 7th in team ERA for the month. And that goes back to when they were getting beat up on the road in Kansas City, etc. When you go look at the month of May, which, by the way, the White Sox have a winning month right now. I know we're only halfway through. They're one game over. But look, they won 5 games all of March and April. 5. The Royals would like to have a conversation about best team ERA. They have a 2.64 in May, but the White Sox have a 3.45. The White Sox are better than the Phillies, the Red Sox, the Tigers, the Cubs, the Astros, the Dodgers, the Brewers, etc.
Yeah, that's what's so frustrating, though, because I can tell you this much. Will Venable, Catty, they're sitting in that locker room post-game, right? And they're going, you don't ever want to disparage or talk shit about, like, oh, if the offense was playing better, or damn, if we could just get someone to come in the 8th and 9th innings. But it's human nature, right? You sit there and you go, God, if we could just swing it, like, at an adequate level, just something just average run-of-the-mill 15th in the league, they'd probably be right up there around 500 baseball right now. And that's what is frustrating when, one side of the ball, the pitching is doing so great, and the offense still, I think we saw today, there's 5 guys in the lineup under 200.
It's
and
unbelievable.
That's tough to win games doing that.
200 or lower. We counted it right before we came on when they put the lineup up. It's like, and you got a guy, you got Jacob Amaya, and I know, like, how much it stings me to even. It's not my 102. He's hitting 102 and he's still here. And you talk about if the offense was just even average, they've scored 47 runs in the month of May. Now, it's actually lockstep with the Cincinnati Reds, who have also scored 47. There's certainly no Pittsburgh Pirates who are scoring 29 runs, but they're at the bottom. You're talking about the bottom 7 teams of the league. Their pitching has carried them. And we talked about this a little bit last week with Connor McKnight. The creativity the White Sox have shown in using an opener. Tyler Eisert's kind of been their opener. Jonathan Cannon, look at what Jonathan Cannon's done when there's been an opener. He's pitched deep into the game. Now you're talking about shortening the game to the 7th, 8th, and 9th inning while using your starter as your main guy in the 2nd and on. Yet last night, as we taped this, Davis Martin, another great, pitches deep into the 7th inning, 6 2/3. You are getting really good pitching from guys that you want to see. That's what's exciting to me. And this is why I want to talk about why it looks different. Jonathan Cannon's the guy you're counting on in the future. Davis Martin's the guy you're counting on in the future. The Shane Smith story is as good as any story in baseball.
It's awesome.
Sean Burke has had ebbs and flows, but he's been good. And he takes the ball every 5th day and he pitches whether he has it or not. Those 4 guys have been really, really good. And Bryce Wilson has actually stepped up as that long swingman into being stretched out as a starter for the White Sox. I'm not sitting here telling you guys are winning Cy Youngs, but the pitching that they're getting and what Ethan Katz has done, the White Sox organization is doing things differently in 2025 with their pitching staff than they've done in the previous 15 to 20 years.
Yeah, I mean, look at what the White Sox are doing as a staff right now. They found the formula to get the job done right now. And the only crappy part is the offense isn't where it needs to be, right? No. It's not even close to where it needs to be right now. But you look at it, and just as baseball happens, as the season, as long as it is, at some point the White Sox are going to be firing, on the offensive side. And there'll be a time. So? Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, like, it'll be better. I mean, like, it can't always be this bad. I said in the summer months, even I hit like 360 one month in July, I think back in 2006. But, you just hope that the White Sox can maintain this formula and this competitiveness on the mound, because if and when the White Sox offensively start doing better, that's where you rack up those wins, right? That's where you can rattle off 4 or 5 wins in a row. It's so hard to do it because it's so discouraging for a staff to look up and go, man, like, we only gave up 3 runs.
I need to be
lost
perfect.
4-3.
I need to be perfect.
Yeah.
They get traffic on. They have 1 bad inning, and you're sitting there going, well, here we go again, because we've talked about the White Sox in the first inning being one of the really good first inning teams and their inability to pile on. They've been better. I'm not going to sit here and give them credit. They've been better piling on as we look at the OPSs this month. Outside of Miguel Vargas, BA, you look at that lineup and Lenine Sosa, like any of those OPSs are not great, by the way. They're league average, 714 for Sosa, Vargas 729. Everyone else is below league average in terms of where you like. They're like below replacement level player.
Yeah, and that's the frustrating part. I know, Marcus Timms. Again, I've got a lot of respect for that guy. I played against him. The one thing I loved about him is he was sell out, fastball, middle away, launch, right? And that's the thing. I just get so frustrated, especially guys like Luis Robert, Andrew Vaughn, Tim Elko, now that he's up there. If nothing else, man, in hitters counts, or if you're struggling, get a fastball out over the plate and get into one, especially in this ballpark. Right? Like the fact that Tim Elko wasn't in the lineup today, I wanted to text Chris Getz and be like, you shitting me? Like, why did you call him up? The guy's 6'5", 230. He's going to pop a few up over that St. Elizabeth healthcare sign over there. So I'm sure he'll
interesting.
He'll be in. I there's no doubt he'll come into pinch hit probably in the 7th and stay in, but still. Like,
but no Vaughn. No, you got Lenine Sosa playing first base. And I'm not going to be critical of Will Venable because I to me, and I want to talk about this point. He's as big of a reason as to you're starting to see.
Yeah.
The bricks have been starting. The bricks are being laid as we speak, but you're starting to see progress on the house they're trying to build. And I've talked about the foundation, how they had to blow up the concrete and start all over. They've started to lay the brick, and Will Venable's a big part of it. I don't love the fact that Tim Elko or Andrew Vaughn.
Yeah.
It's like not playing first base, but to be honest with you, Vaughn's been Vaughn. Maybe he's given Elko a day to rest his legs, and he's going to plan on using him at Wrigley Field for 3 days, which actually would be kind of good and kind of cool. Yeah,
I mean, you figure for 5th, 6th inning, if one of those guys isn't hitting, lefty comes in or someone like throws heavy fastball, out over the dish, I got Elko probably pinch hitting sooner in the game than later. But again, this is I remember, I think we spoke before the podcast. Back in 08, 09, we used to go play those interleague games and the civil rights series and stuff. It was awesome. Mm-hmm. But us as American League Central baseball players, we used to go play the NL teams, those interleague games in Cincinnati. And my God, we would just be salivating because it's nice out. You're getting some of these guys that heavy fastball out over the plate. And the ballparks are small and the ball carries. So I'd go out there sometimes and be like, oh, Cueto's on the mound. Who gives a shit? Let's ride. So It's just nice to get out there and get a change of scenery. There you go. That'd be one of the best hits in the history of baseball right there.
Dribbler infield single from Miguel Vargas. The White Sox have 8 home runs this month, which is tied for last in baseball. And it's clearly a problem. I mean, they just don't have – look, the talent is still going to be the talent.
Sorry to interrupt you real quick, but the White Sox just got on base right now. You bet your ass they're going to review that, and he's going to be out.
They're already they're already.
Look at first play of the game. He's out.
They're already challenging the first play of the game, which looks like to be. He actually is out. Yeah, he is out.
That's the poor guy. That's White Sox.
That's good hustle.
Yeah.
He's out.
Yep. Sorry.
No, it's that looks like White Sox baseball. Tyler, appreciate the comment. If you have questions or comments for me and BA, shoot them in the chat. We'll get to them. But when you look at the White Sox and their inability to hit the ball at the ballpark, it shouldn't be that surprising because of the lineup that they're putting out there. We talked about 5 guys hitting 200 or less. However, I look at the other day and I tweeted this. I think it was after the Miami game. Maybe it was the first Reds game this week. You had 6 hits and 5 RBI from Chase Mydroth, Miguel Vargas, and Edgar Caro. That's a day where you go, man, like when you look at the box where you're going, I talked about the bricks. That's what you want to see. I'd rather give me that as much as possible than even if it's Vaughn and Robert, like I'd rather see those guys with that type of production than any 3 players in the lineup, because that to me, and then you have Cannon go out and shove for 6 scoreless. That's what I'm talking about. You're starting to go, oh, okay, this makes sense. And I'm not trying to sit here and tell you Miguel Vargas is some type of all-star. He's hitting like 214.
Yeah, but I mean, hey, that's red hot for them right now. But to your point, but we watch, Chuck and Ozzy on the pregame show, they posted a stat. And again, you don't ever want to disparage these guys as a coach, as fans. You want to start, you want to be able to pick out the positives from the lineup. But I think they said in 2 games, the White Sox had 8 extra base hits, and that was a highlight. Now, in reference, looking back, I go, yeah, I get that the team's different. It's built different. The guys I played with, perennial all-stars every single year. But I'm going, shit, Paul Konerko, Jim Thome will rattle off 8 extra base hits in a series. So although White Sox fans should look at that as a positive, I think the standard, again, the goal is to always get the standard back up here. And right now it's just kind of like, all right, what can we give them? What little tidbits can we give them to grasp onto until we get hot?
It's crazy when you look at like a batting average, because batting average is not the same as it once was when you played. It's just not. Okay.
I'd still be playing.
You'd still be playing. You would. I mean, I'm looking at guys who have played, let's call it 20 games. 20 games or more for the White Sox. Edgar Carroll, far and away your batting average leader. 296. That's what Edgar Carroll has not hit the ball at the ballpark, but that dude has been clutch.
Yeah.
And he's got a great eye. I love really kind of everything about him. He's got 21 hits, 9 walks, only 13 strikeouts. So that's a ratio you can live with. He's got 9 RBI. He's got a 390 on base. Like Edgar Carroll, Edgar Carroll, plug and play. Then you could drop to Lenine Sosa, 270. He leads the team in hits with 40, which is by far the most hits on the team. 272, 291 on base. Then you jump down. Chase Mydroth, he's hitting 246. I can live with that because his on base is 350.
Yeah.
When I look at those two guys, I look at Carroll and Mydroth and see 100 points higher on the on base. Mydroth has 11 walks. Okay. He's got 11. Matt Theis, believe it or not, has 19 walks and 15 strikeouts. He's not going anywhere. Vargas has walked more. Luis Roberts walked more. He struck out a ton. But you look at the clips of everybody else, and you're seeing average 224, on base 275, 298. Carroll and Mydroth specifically, what have you seen from those two guys? What's impressed you most at two guys coming up in a very bottom of the rebuild and seeing where they've been able to have success?
Well, I mean, one thing I love about their attitude, you can see it with their body language, is the energy, right? Those kids are coming up. They're excited to be on the field. They're amped up. A walk to Mydroth is the same as a hit for him, and that's great. That's a great thing. That's very Jim Thome-esque, right? Put something in the cookie jar. But with Carroll and those guys, I appreciate what they're saying, but it's kind of like one of those things where, like, fuck it. If you guys aren't going to do it, we'll do it. And it doesn't matter if they're rookies, but again, that's the frustrating part from a fan standpoint and an organizational standpoint is you want to go in the locker room and go, hey, fellas, like Ozzie would have went into that locker room and been like, yo, these two, Gordon Beckham, when he got called up, was carrying us, one or two younger guys being like, fellas, the 3 youngest guys on the team are carrying us right now. You older guys need to step up. And so that's, I think, what they're missing a little bit is those older guys going, hey, getting together, being like, dude, we suck right now. We need to step up and help carry this team. We're getting paid the most money. And I'm not saying you can't have a bad year, but you can't be hitting sub 200 with no juice. Yeah.
Then it'd be interesting to see when the White Sox get like Michael Tauchman back, Corey Lee even. It'll be interesting to see how they even handle Corey Lee because now they actually have a catching problem. Kyle Teal's knocking on the door. Having a catching problem, 30 clubs in baseball would love to have that. Here's a question from Tyler. Do you guys think that Mike Vasil should be a full-time closer? So he's another Rule 5 guy. Great story. He's been fantastic. He's 2-1 with a 1.80 ERA. He got his first save last night. The White Sox have 3 saves as a team.
Killing it.
3 different guys have a save because they're trying to figure out who goes where at the back end of a bullpen. The Mike Clevenger experiment didn't work. He's down at AAA, believe it or not, being stretched out. He got to start last night for the Charlotte Knights, but right now I just think you keep him down there as an insurance policy. But Mike Vasil, here he is, 25 innings, 16 hits, 15 strikeouts. The walks are an issue. He's walked a ton of guys. He's walked 14 guys and 15 strikeouts.
Yeah.
But he's kind of learning on the job, and he's been able to he's probably been their best and most consistent reliever. So, Tyler, my answer to the question is, should he? I think he's progressing towards that position because I do think if you asked Will Venable, would you like to be able to assign a guy in the 9th inning and know that? I think the answer would be yes. What do you think about Mike Vasil?
I think for the record, it's going to be closer by committee, but he should absolutely be given the opportunity. Those Rule 5 guys are special because they have a chip on their shoulder and they have something to prove. So I think as long as he's healthy and he's not, 2-3 days in a row, I don't think they're going to push him more than 2 days in a row, even if it is a safe situation. But absolutely, he should be given the opportunity. But it's going to be closer by committee. It's still, well, by the way, I keep looking at Wilson up there, thinking it's Lance Lynn, but it's not.
He really looks like
Lance Lynn's little brother.
Poor man's Lance Lynn. He's not getting quite the same contract. Yeah. Folks, quick time out to talk about something serious. We've all said it before. If only I had slowed down. The Illinois Tollway's new ad campaign is called If Only. Use that banner for you. And it's a powerful reminder that speeding doesn't just put you at risk. It affects everyone on the road. Every crash leaves someone wishing they had done things differently. So take the extra time. Slow down saves lives. Lives, including yours, depend on it. We are very proud to partner with the Illinois Tollway, proud sponsor and partner and title sponsor of the White Sox Recap Podcast with myself and Brian Anderson. The Sox won their first road series. No matter what happens today, they've already locked up the series in Terry Francona's Cincinnati Reds. I'm sure people in Cincinnati aren't very happy with the way things are going with the Reds if they're losing to the White Sox. But BA,
but let me tell you this real quick. It's funny you mentioned that. Oftentimes, they look back on your baseball career and you go, the toughest thing for myself and most baseball players, but really the guys that are younger, you go 2 for 2 your first 2 at bats. It's so easy to give away those next 2 at bats because in your head you're going, I already had a great day. But it's so important, I think, today for the White Sox to sweep this series. Yes, it's great if you go 2 or 3. Yes, you're happy getting on that bus back to the airport. But, man, if you can sweep, a sweep is so much bigger than just taking the series 2 out of 3 or getting a 3 out of 4. You go into an opposing ballpark and you sweep that team, the team morale is 10 times better than just a regular series win.
And you're going into a series where, quite frankly, at Wrigley Field, it'll probably be the best environment you play in all year. I mean, you're going to play in a lot of great ballparks, Yankee Stadium, etc. But no one cares about you. Yankees. No. The Yankee fans don't give a damn about you. The Cub fans do. And we're already in. So we're watching the game live here. Kind of some ugly traffic here for Bryce Wilson. Nothing's been hit hard. You just an infield single, bloop single, bases loaded, nobody out. This is what I'm talking about now. Bryce Wilson that's an Ellie De La Cruz little bloop. There's nothing you can do there.
That's the Pablo Osuna special.
I call that,
right there.
That's the Kansas City special. That's the White Sox have lost a lot of games to Kansas City with bloop singles like that. But this is where some of their starters have done a great job. Now, Bryce Wilson, I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. He's a reliever turned starter, former starter with the Brewers, kind of that swingman. I think in our recap predictions podcast, I actually predicted that Bryce Wilson would lead the team in wins because of his swingman ability.
Yes.
I'm not sure that's going to happen, but quite frankly, that is all up for debate as we see.
5 1/3 gets it done every time.
Let's see, who is the White Sox wins leader right now? Sean Burke, Jonathan Cannon, Davis Martin, and Mike Vassell, all with 2.
Yeah,
those are your leaders. The funny thing will be to see, will anyone actually get to 10 wins
or
10
boys.
saves?
Slow down.
10
what did
saves.
We say? Wait, what was our prediction before the year ended? Who would have the most wins, or what would be the most wins for a starter? I think I might have said 10. You said 9 or 8 or something like that.
Something like that. Yeah. And I actually might have predicted that the most wins 1-0 Reds on a sac fly. I might have said it was going to come from who's our guy that's hurt? Martin Perez.
Yeah.
So, and I said he'd be the guy who's
what's
the
latest
all-star
with him, by the way?
He's 60-day IL, and 60-day. They do think he'll pitch again this summer, but at 60-day ILs for pitchers usually a sign that things are not good. But let's focus on let's go to Crosstown, and this is fun because I'm going to go out there tomorrow morning, and you're going to see a lot of quote unquote kids walking into Wrigley Field for the first time that are Chicago White Sox players, and a lot of guys with there's a great. See, you playing the infield in there, and Jacob Amaya, my boy, they're playing the infield in. Spencer Steer lines one up, but it's a short line drive. Amaya's there to make the catch, and all of a sudden you're 2 outs. You make a pitch here, you're out of an inning where you only give up 1 on a sac fly. And it's exactly what you want.
Limit the damage. Those first 2 innings, man. If you can limit the damage. When you're giving up those bloopers, those Kansas City specials, it comes back in the 6th, 7th inning. You're going, man, how big was it that he didn't give up a 4 spot in the first inning? So
so we'll see what happens here with the White Sox. They can get out of this inning and only giving up a run. That gives – what kind of bump does that give an offense?
It will get a lot. But first things first, I was just thinking about this. You mentioned this a little bit ago with Wilson. It's funny because obviously the White Sox are struggling. They're not where they want to be as a franchise right now. As
well, so much for that. It's 3-0.
Stay hot. Sorry about that. But my point was this: you could see how things have come and things have shifted. The expectation, myself, you included. You said something like, "Oh, well, Wilson's more of like a hybrid guy," and I go, "Well, that's like the equivalent of someone going to me, like me getting the spot start against a lefty and me going 0 for 4, 3 strikeouts. Like you would never say, well, BA usually goes in to replace somebody on defense. Like he fucking sucked today, Right. So I think that's just what the White Sox need to do is just raise the standard and get back to what White Sox baseball used to be in that 05 to like 2010, 13, and all the way up to 21.
No, but here's what I'll say. He may have picked him off at first. It was pretty close. He had him leaning. This is why. Okay, the talent is, I've said it 1,000 times, and we all know, like, it is what it is. From a pitching standpoint, I think I'll be interested to see if we hear rumors about teams calling the White Sox on some of these young controllable arms. and what the White Sox would be willing to do. I personally don't think there's much to move there. I mean, I've seen some rumors lately about would the White Sox consider moving Shane Smith for a top prospect. And I'm like, at some point here, we got to build around the guys that you're developing, unless you're getting a top 50 dude.
Yeah, or two.
And I don't see that happening with a guy who's made 8 career starts. If you could rob Peter in that case, but you don't want to rob Peter to pay Paul. Because you're just doing this. You're just spinning it back and forth. You're putting the motor in reverse, and you're going backwards. But defensively, especially in May, like they have looked. I'm trying to pull this up here. The White Sox have been better. They've played. This is exactly, and this is why I say it feels and looks different. And I'm not like the White Sox are still going to lose 100 games. I feel really strong about saying that. I know you have a 60. I have 53 wins. You have 63. I think they're more like a 53 right now. It'll be fun to see kind of that along the way. But defensively, running first to third, being where you're supposed to be. I know it sounds elementary and almost little league-ish, but the White Sox were not doing that. Even in their first rebuild.
Yeah.
They were just
online
plugging and playing.
I know you're going to hold their feet to the fire because you're diehard, you're a Chicago sports fan through and through, but just reading some of the comments and some of the posts online as they score another run here, unless that's foul. But reading some of the comments, you could see the shift. A lot of the naysayers like my boy White Sox Dave, with Barstool.
They've all given up.
Guys like Mike on Twitter. A lot of those guys that are very, very pessimistic and very, very tough on these guys, you can even see the shift in their posts and kind of their attitude towards this team. It's like, hey, we still aren't good, but man, this team's a lot more fun to watch. But
it goes back to what I was saying about look at the guys who are produced. When you look at the box score and you see 6 hits, 5 RBI from guys who are going to be here and actually be here for the next wave, the Maidros, the Caros, the Vargas. For now, Miguel Vargas is not like he's part of this.
Yeah.
Elko gets the walk, not the walk-off, but the game-winning homer against the Marlins. That's hell yeah, you should be excited. Sure. That should excite you. If Jacob Amaya's knocking in 3 runs a night, I'm not sure who's that's moving the meter. Okay.
Yeah.
It's just not. So, Jay comes in here. Jay Diaz, please don't move Shane Smith. Amen. Now I will say this. The caveat is some team, the Dodgers,
there's 15 teams.
The Dodgers have there are teams. We're so tunnel vision in Chicago in every market about, this team's missing X, like the Cubs. This team, they don't have a third baseman. They need a starting pitcher. Do you know the Dodgers are last in baseball from innings pitched by their starters?
Yeah, I know, because they have 15 of them.
And 14 of them are on the IL.
Who has the question? It said Jay?
Jay Diaz, yep.
So Jay, here's my thing. If I'm a GM, I always used to play, armchair GM when I sit at home sometimes. And if I'm Chris Getz and I'm giving up, one of my starters that are throwing well, top 2 or 3 guys that are controllable, I always told myself, you got to go get a prospect and you got to go get a Jeff Blum. And by what I mean by that is you got to go get someone that is a veteran guy that could go play everywhere, that's going to be a good clubhouse presence, that will also put up numbers and show what it's like to be a pro. Because the thing is, when you start dishing out and get rid of some of your more productive players, you got to have something that replaces them in the locker room and on the field. And so I was lucky enough, I had Toby Hall, the backup catcher, who's a pro who could have been a starter everywhere else.
Yep.
Jeff Blum was there. Even Rob Makoviak for a while, who struggled in center. But you know what? You could stick him anywhere, and he would go rattle off 2 hits in a game. He just knew what it was like to be a gamer. So I think in order to give up one of those controllable arms, you got to go get a prospect, a really good one, like you said, top 50, and a kind of that, like a Kike Hernandez, like someone that can go out there and play any position.
Now, some people would say, wait a minute, Guff. If you told me in February, A, Shane Smith was making the team, you'd be like, really? B, I can move Shane Smith at the deadline for a promising guy outside the top 100. I'd probably say I'm intrigued. Well, things change.
Yeah.
Things change, and I'm not saying he's untouchable. That just doesn't happen. Like at this point in the game, you moved Garrett Crochet, but you're not going to get a Garrett Crochet return, but you do need a significant haul. If we're talking about moving guys, I want to get to Robert's question specifically to you. Can we get BA's opinion on some of Andrew Vaughn's decisions while on third base? So I'm guessing he's saying runners on third with 1 out.
Well, here's the thing. I could promise you this much. I've seen a few of them, but when there's a runner on third base with less than 2 outs, that's not Andrew Vaughn. I'm convinced that's not Andrew Vaughn's call. Will Venables giving that call to the third base coach from the dugout saying, there's either going to be a sign like this, which means you're going on contact, or we're going to see it through, or a chopper. But even on third base less than 2 outs, the rule of thumb is even if we're going to see it through, or, we're going to wait till it's a fly ball or something through the infield, if there's a chopper, you automatically go. If you have any decent speed at all, unless you're like Paul Konerko or Jim Thome, you see a chopper and you see that trajectory and the ball going up in the air, you go, because that's just being a good baseball player. But I wouldn't be too hard on Andrew Vaughn, because those calls are probably coming from the dugout saying we're going on contact.
Interesting. Runners on third, less than 2 out for Andrew Vaughn this year. He's had 10 plate appearances. He's hitting .222. He does have a .556 slug. He's got a homer and 5 RBI. He hasn't been awful in that situation. The problem is you're probably looking at him. There's been not a lot of them, and you're looking at the ones that have felt bad. Like I could think about ones where he's rolled over. It's first and third, 1 out, rolls 1 over. We're out of the inning. We know he's not known for his hustle. With runners in scoring position, 200, 229, 444.
I think they're talking about him being on third base running. But
that's not why he was drafted.
No, but the thing is that, but I can think of some at bats that Andrew Vaughn has had with runners on third base less than 2. And the thing is too is like, God, I'm just watching his swing right now, and you so desperately want to grab him. He's getting so torqued at the plate that he has to kind of come out and cast around. And I'm sure Marcus Timms has worked on that with him. But the Andrew Vaughn I know, and I know it's not college anymore, I know it's not the minor leagues, but when Andrew Vaughn is hot, he takes that pitch middle away out over the dish, like him even swing at that pitch right there. I mean, that ball's up and in. It's so hard to handle that pitch. You could be the best player in baseball, whether it be Ken Griffey Jr. in his prime, or Javi Baez right now swinging it. Maybe Javi Baez might be the only person that can hit that pitch, the ball that's 3 baseballs inside on the plate and elevated.
Here's what people don't want to hear, because you hear it from like the organization and coaches and guys who are with him every single day. He's one of baseball's best hitters, like hardest hit rate. Well, it's dropped a little bit. He's 40th in all of baseball. 40th in all of baseball. Hard hit percentage.
Well, not that last one.
49.2%. I mean, he's right there with like Bryce Harper's right in that conversation, Christian Yelich, Alec Boehm, Dansby Swanson. But those guys, they don't have the same results as Andrew Vaughn does right now. And when you look at barrel percentage, these are advanced metrics, okay? They don't show up in your slash line. But if you look at barrel percentage, which means how many times when he comes up to bat, the percentage of times you're getting a barrel, okay? The leader in all of baseball, I'm going to give you 2 guesses who the top 2 are.
Oh, Shohei Ohtani.
And
Shohei Ohtani.
Aaron Judge.
Yeah.
Shohei Ohtani and Aaron Judge at 20, Judge at 26, Shohei's at 25.
Well, I'll tell you this much about, and this is not knocking Andrew Vaughn. I
want to tell you this real quick. Vaughn's 24th in all of baseball, almost 15%. He's ahead of Kyle Schwarber. So it would tell you that his expected batting average should be higher. His I'm looking at it right now. And again, I'm not making excuses for Andrew Vaughn, but when you put it all in the blender, it says it should be, let's see, what's this stat here?
230.
It should be like 250.
Yeah, no, there's no doubt. There's no doubt that he's probably hit some balls hard, but I could tell you this much. So is Shohei Ohtani. So is Andrew Judge. Andrew Judge hitting 400. I promise you, he's lined out more than anyone in the league. The problem is when you know what the swing looks like, and I know this because I did it all the time. When you're barreling balls or you're kind of lining out and stuff, that's just a precursor to like having, some struggling the times before. It's a numbers game. When you go up there 50 times, even when I was bad, I was going to run into, 10 balls hard.
Yeah.
But when the other 40 are dog shit, it's kind of just, it's tough to hit at a high average.
Yeah. Expected weighted on base average. That's the stuff that people are like, hey, wait, what's that mean? And it's hard to explain it, but Aaron Judge's is 5-0.
Yeah. I mean, because if you're doing that again, there's times where you go through a stretch where even the coaches, the hitting coach, the manager are all sitting there going, God, man, this guy lines out all the time. Juan Uribe, great example. Juan Uribe would hit absolute scud missiles everywhere and get out. But then, how Uribe would go through one of those stretches, same with Alexi Ramirez, where he'd chase fastballs at his head. You're going like, well, Yeah, I mean, he lined out a lot, but he also struck out 6 of the last 8 at-bats, chasing balls over his head. No, it all evens out. And there are some guys with their expected batting average that should be hitting a couple, 20, 30 points higher. But
sometimes that does find its way back where the pendulum swings back and you're not barreling as many balls, but you're getting hits like Ellie De La Cruz had in the first inning. But no, again, it's still going to equal 230, 240, and that's not good. Jay says, the way Smith is pitching with his long-term control, one prospect isn't nowhere near enough. Agreed. We need a Crochet level package because he's earning that value. I'd rather wait until the offseason. Okay. He's not getting a Crochet level package.
Jay, what are you talking about?
I mean,
no, I'm kidding.
I appreciate we're probably somewhere in between. Yes, he's not worth one prospect unless that guy's like a top 50, top 40, and he's not going to get Crochet level. So, but he's also not going to be traded for somebody's 25-year-old swing guy that's flamed out with another organization.
No, I'm going to get maybe if I'm Getty, he's on the trade block, and you got a team that needs like a frontline starter, had an injury. If it's like Boston or even New York or the Dodgers or someone in the mix out there, right? Houston, something like that. I'm going to get 2 of their top probably 10 prospects, even if it's a 9 and a 15 arms, that one that's consistently good, that has proven stock, and another guy that's like a flamethrower, like a Noah Schultz. That's like, hey, this kid, he's all over the place, but he's 6'10", throwing 100. So that's what
I'm just gonna go ahead and rule out that Shane Smith is going to be traded.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm gonna rule it out. I'm gonna do a little background on it though. Okay. For you fine folks asking about it, I'm gonna take a deep dive and BA knows. I'll make a few phone calls and talk to a few people, but both in and outside of the organization, I wonder how he's valued outside of the White Sox, because I do think people are looking at him going, somehow we missed that guy.
No, he's on a great team. He's probably a 4 or 5, but he's that guy that goes in there and gives you those quality starts and keeps their team in the game.
Couple of more here before we wrap things up. Tom wants to know, can the White Sox take over Soldier Field when the Bears move to Arlington? Okay, so
that's an awesome question.
It's in theory, it's a good idea. Okay, here's why it won't happen. The Park District owns Soldier Field. That's it. That's why it won't happen. That's why the Bears are getting out of this in the first place. The Bears are going to Arlington Heights because they own the property. And by owning your stadium, it makes your franchise significantly more. It adds value to $1 billion to your franchise. The White Sox currently don't own the rate. And that's a huge reason that Jerry Reinsdorf and company are looking to move. I personally think the rate's fine. I do. I understand the need and want and desire to move closer to downtown and build like a new neighborhood in the 78. But going to Soldier Field, think about all the things that make Soldier Field terrible now. I hate Soldier Field. I think it's a horrific stadium for amenities for fans. I don't think it's a good experience. I don't think it's a travel-friendly experience. Whether you're taking the train or driving, it sucks to get in and out of. And most importantly, the park owns it. So they're not going to tear Soldier Field down. Part of Soldier Field is a historic landmark.
Yeah.
So the columns are staying. The White Sox would have to acquire land next to or near Soldier Field. You have McCormick Place, so you're not buying any lots. I like the idea, but the 78 makes a lot more sense, because if you look at all of the red tape around Soldier Field, it's exactly why we've gotten here in the first place.
You know what I don't hate? I don't hate the White Sox taking a series that might not have a lot of fanfare. Like, you go in there and the Pirates are in town in interleague. I don't hate the fact that you take that series and go play 2 of the games over at Soldier Field. Could be the juice may not be worth the squeeze, but I think it would certainly gauge like maybe the White Sox interest, or get some more fans that may not go to a White Sox game typically. Because will they get 80,000 fans? No, but I bet you they go get 50. But also with that said too, you used to see at the old Coliseum with the A's, right? It's a lot of work to shift that over from a football field to a baseball field. Like, it's really hard.
You're talking about like, if you're going to have to, almost like the Braves did after the Olympics in '96, where they turned Olympic Stadium into the new Turner Field at the time. Yeah. It took 2 or 3. It's like building a new ballpark. You're tearing parts down. You're reconfiguring. We just saw an incredible catch by Luis Robert, easily robbed of minimum a double, likely a triple. And those are the things teams. The frustrating thing about Luis Robert is still going to remain the frustrating thing, is that for whatever reason at the plate, He's chasing. His whiff percentage is up. He looks like he's not dialed in. He doesn't have any protection. But defensively, dude, he's still top 10 talent, and he's as good as anyone when you look at it.
He doesn't have any protection because they're like, he's like, someone's looking at him, like whoever's hitting in front of him's like, thanks, Luis. Thanks for raising your average up to 190. Tell him to start protecting somebody first.
That's amen to that.
Yeah.
I mean, we can look at some other terrible teams. You know, Mike Trout's been on a lot of bad teams, and he's not. I know he's on the IL, but he was still able to put up big numbers. Eli, thanks for watching, man. Eli's in Jerusalem watching the White Sox.
What's up, Eli?
Watching the White Sox and watching us. Bradley, hey, Bears, did you see a report that Caleb told his dad he wanted to play for the Vikings? Hey, Bradley, this is the White Sox Recap Podcast.
How me, Brad? Hey.
By the way, Brad, I doesn't give it. No, he can tell his dad anything he wants. The Bears have 4 more years with him.
Wait, hold on. I got one comment about that.
I don't think that's
one comment about
that. By
the
way, hold on. Before you look at his icon, is Kevin O'Connell, the head coach of the Vikings. I think you're stirring shit up, Bradley.
But Brad, before you get off there, real quick, I'm not a Bears fan. I grew up a Rams fan, but I do root for the Bears. Is Caleb Williams going to be fine as long as someone could go inside his brain and just turn on the sense of urgency and that internal clock in the pocket, going from 10 seconds to 3.4? He's going to be great.
I think you're going to see a massive upgrade, my friend. I know that you're more of a Tyson Bagent guy. Tyson Bagent here in the studios last night.
Tyson, I brought my shorts today.
Yeah, you got to put your nut cutters on. Yeah. So, Tyson Bagent, if you guys haven't checked that out on the channel, it's really good stuff about his relationship with Caleb Williams and just how things have changed with Ben Johnson in the building the last couple of months. A couple more, and then we got to hop off because I got to do the recap lunch hour. Jay's been a big fan of the podcast. Hopefully, you guys are undervaluing Smith. He's an ace. I hope we don't trade him. Okay, Jay, look, first of all, neither one of us are undervaluing Smith. If you're picking an all-star on this team right now, it's unanimously Shane Smith.
Well, here's my thing, 100%. And this is not to disparage Smith. I've been saying that a lot this year. But Jay, here's how I know that there's a gross difference between these two pitchers. If you took the lineup I was on back in the day, packed stock full of Hall of Famers and All-Stars, when Garrett Crochet was on the mound, we'd be like, fuck, dude, this guy's dialed in. Shane Smith is on the mound, or if Smith's on the mound, then every single one of us are like salivating to get up to the plate. Nothing against him. It's just your stock righty, with really good stuff as opposed to wipeout lefty with unbelievable stuff.
Is it the changeup, the slider? He's got one of the best wipeout pitchers in baseball. I'm not undervaluing him, Jay, at all. But he was, I think, the 25th White Sox top. Like when you're ranking the White Sox system, he was the 25th prospect going into the year. That means nothing now. Those have changed. How people look at him will change. If he continues this pace, he will be an all-star. That's a fact.
He should be an all-star.
Yeah. But you're not getting that type of pack. Like Garrett Crochet was a top 15 pick, and he was one of the best pitchers in all of baseball last year with control. Like
he's uncomfortable at bat.
His ceiling. He's not even there, and that's why maybe a year from now we're talking about Shane Smith like this. Sure, but right now, and this is why you don't trade him. This is why you're not going to get the return that you think you can get. Plus, by the way,
Noah Schultz is so good.
Noah Schultz has been really good lately.
Now that guy, Jay, I would say if he was shoving like that, I'd be like, you got to go get you got to get the farm for that guy.
Yeah, Noah Schultz would get you a bigger return today, Jay Diaz, than Shane Smith. It's a fact. Bradley, of course, you're trolling. He didn't want to play for Chicago White Sox. Guess what? For you and I, my friend, week 1 Monday Night Football, you get J.J. McCarthy. We get Caleb Williams. Line it up. Let's go. Tom, last one. Okay, so one of your problems with White Sox at Soldier Field is parking. Many Southsiders would take public transit, and average attendance for Sox is 18K, where Bears is 59,000. So parking isn't an issue. Hey, Tom, it's an issue. Half of people at Soldier Field commute, okay? You have to walk 1.5 miles to the train. Secondly, the White Sox would not have a 60,000 capacity stadium. That would be knocked down to about 35,000. While I appreciate this argument, the White Sox are not going to build a new stadium that they don't own. It just won't happen.
Agreed.
They won't build a new stadium that they don't own. They want public funding. That's part of this mess. The Bears are trying to get it at the same time. There's a lot of layers to this. I do think there should be some kind of news on this in the next 18 months. I don't see a scenario where you build it. There's zero reason to build a new stadium unless you own it, in my opinion.
Well, Tom, also, too, you're talking about the attendance is an issue because of transportation. I don't think there's any transportation issues to the Rate Field right now, and they're packing it chock full of like 9,000 people because they stink. That's why.
Come on, man. They're one of the best giveaways and one of the best fan experiences when you go.
Hey, Brooks Boyer, where's my City Connect jersey?
That's what it's funny. I actually texted. Hey, Brooks, I texted you. Still waiting.
Still
waiting. I actually texted. I was like, dude, bring him on the podcast. Me and BA.
Yeah.
We'll do.
I got
Brooks,
a few coming.
We're calling you out, man. Where you at?
Come on, Brooksy.
Hook us up. Brian Anderson, this is fun, dude. We should do the live. We'll mix it up. We'll do more live. Give me a prediction on the Crosstown series. What do you think?
White Sox are going to win the series. I think,
win the series.
Well, I think. Watch. I'm gonna call it out. I'm gonna call sweep only because Cap will lose his mind. Cap will.
I'm here for that.
I will show up. Cap will have an absolute meltdown. And also, I think because the White Sox are playing a lot better right now, when they get in that warm weather, that smaller ballpark, the energy's in there, they'll rise to the occasion.
It is supposed to be warmer this weekend, although it's supposed to start getting chilly again. They are throwing Shane Smith, big topic of this podcast, Shane Smith, Sean Burke, and Jonathan Cannon. Those are their three horses.
It's only three pitchers I know.
Well, Davis Martin just won his career.
Was good.
So I'm not going to say sweep. I'll say this. The Cubs won't sweep the White Sox. That's what I'm going to say. All right. So that's not a bold prediction, but the White Sox are not going to get swept by the Cubs. And Jay's also here for Cap losing. We appreciate all the comments. Thanks for participating. Thanks for watching. For those who are catching up on this, we'll do another live podcast down the line. But a lot of good information here, BA. Really good stuff.
Thanks,
As always, he's Brian Anderson. I'm Ryan McGuffey. It's been the White Sox Recap Podcast, brought to you by the Illinois Tollway's If Only campaign. The Illinois Tollway launching the If Only campaign aimed at increasing awareness of the tragic consequences speeding can have, not just for the driver, but for others impacted by the crash. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time on the White Sox Recap Podcast.
Your boy.